and welcome back to another episode of Lightspeed. I'm your host, Jack Kubinek, joined today by Smitty himself, Dan Smith from Blockworks Research, former Lightspeed host, fan favorite on this podcast. Dan, thanks for coming on the show.
My favorite title of all time, former Lightspeed host. Shout out Garrett Harper. We miss you. Hope you're crushing it at squads.
We're still yet to get all the Infinity Stones together.
One day.
Four host pod.
I would love that, actually. We all simultaneously intro the show.
Well, I think we're going to hop into it because we have a bit of a shorter episode today. We're doing a Roundup episode. It's been a little bit since we've done one of these. Lots of interesting news in the Solana world. One that I wanted to dive into that I think maybe is getting a little less coverage than you'd think, but is very consequential is PumpFun, the hugely successful Solana meme coin launchpad, launched PumpSwap. It's AMM. It kind of severed its unofficial partnership with Radium for token graduations and is now running an AMM and kind of a larger DEX as well. So, and one thing I would add is that the Blockworks Research dashboard for PumpFun and PumpSwap just went live. There's been a real lack of good data, so I was really excited when that went live. And I guess I just wanted to start by asking you, Dan, you've obviously been looking through this dashboard, helping construct it and so forth. What are you seeing in the PumpSwap data from week one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share a screen here. I guess quick TLDR, PumpFun token launchpad historically only had its bonding curve, and then once tokens cleared that bonding curve, they graduated into a Radium AMM pool. And I think you got to add my screen to the stage here, but they recently created their own AMM. So they'd operated for, let's call it like 18 months or so on Solana. Started really picking up in September, but if we zoom out here, so we're looking at our trade activity tab within our PumpFun dashboard, and then this chart is of total volume. They really started picking up volume, let's call it in that October to September range of last year. And looking at the last few days, following the launch of their AMM, now tokens are no longer graduating into Radium pools, but rather graduating into their own PumpFun AMM called PumpSwap. So throughout our dashboard, we just kind of refer to that as the AMM, as it's the new product line within the PumpFun suite. So volume has been strong. You can see that volume had been trending lower really since the local top in the market around the beginning of the year, right around the inauguration timeframe. We kind of saw that trend lower roughly 1 week later. I think the inauguration, if I remember correctly, was the 21st, and then the Trump meme coin was the 17th. So you see that volume spike from all of that activity, trending lower, still on that bonding curve, right? The light blue on this chart, but we've seen this huge new volume vertical get created on this with the launch of the AMM, the darker purple on the chart, right? And that makes a ton of sense because historically, PumpFun as a platform would lose out on all future volume once the token graduated, right? It was giving that away to Radium. And now it's internalizing that. So it makes sense. You're actually seeing net new volume come online. Overall, the data looks great. Solana data is tough, and crypto data more broadly is a challenge. One of the popular dashboards on Dune, the user who built it is great. I've been following their work for a while, but unfortunately, they were mispricing some of the volume in terms of translating that to USD. So volume was about twice as high reported by that dashboard. So if you did see that, just make sure you double check the data source. I think they're making a quick change on that dashboard. So hopefully by the time this goes live, that data source will be corrected. But just wanted to flag that for anybody looking into PumpSwap data. But a couple interesting metrics I want to point out. Like first and foremost, PumpFun is still a money printer, but the AMM fee hasn't added a huge amount of value in terms of their historical revenue, but I wouldn't count that out. There's a ton of value moving through the system, and so I would expect that to continue to grow. But one of the interesting things I think is now that they have multiple products, you can see the amount of traders, which in this case is just active addresses. So of course, huge caveat in terms of the quality of this metric, but it's interesting to see that 15% of addresses have traded on both the bonding curve and the AMM. So you do see some crossover between wallets that are trading in this ecosystem, which I find very interesting. But I think my favorite chart on all of this dashboard here is the market cap of tokens launched on Pump Fund. So we break out a few of the popular ones that you've probably seen the names of, but this calculates the total value of all tokens launched through Pump Fund again. And you just see this like meteoric rise again in that same volume burst time frame from roughly 1 million back in the early part of the summer last year, or the summer of 2024, and then boom, go up from 1 billion to 12-ish billion. We've come back down to about this 3 to 4 billion zone as well, which is fascinating.
And this doesn't even include Trump coin, right? Because that was not a Pump Fund token.
Correct. Yeah, that was just a standard token launch, and that was launched through Meteora. So this is strictly Pump Fund tokens that have been launched.
Yeah, that's a crazy metric.
This has been my barometer of. So I've been tracking that specific stat for a while now. I've been tweeting it out a few times, but the only way I could check it was manually checking the CoinGecko Pump Fund tagged asset page. So this gives us full history, right? Because that metric was just you couldn't see any history. So it's been fun to use that as my barometer of sentiment in crypto, at least in Solana meme coin land specifically. But honestly, that's kind of a good barometer for all of crypto more broadly in terms of pure trader on-chain style sentiment. But yeah, now we can see the history and track this in real time, which is fascinating.
Mm. As far as PumpSwap itself, I talked to someone who was kind of trying to make the case that this thing is broader than just an AMM. It's a DEX, and you can bridge assets over. So maybe it's a way that other ecosystem tokens come to Solana to get in on the Solana meme coin craze. But it seems to me like there's nothing all that innovative about PumpSwap. It's not necessarily being used for much other than meme coins. And if you look at the highest volume addresses, this was on the slightly wrong dashboard, but the top volume address was a pool for Balls coin. So
Balls coin.
Which not an ad, but that's a funny name. It seems like this really is just replacing what Radium used to do in the stack, and there's not yet much of a broader use for PumpSwap, it seems like.
Yeah, I think this was just a verticalization play for them. And I pulled up a tweet here from Xerox Sharples, who's the mastermind at Blockworks Research that led the build out of this Pump Fund dashboard. So definitely give him a follow on Twitter. Great follow. Loves tweeting data, which got to respect that as a data guy. But so to bring up your point about not having a lot of volume around the other tokens bridged from different chains or just non-Pump Fund means more broadly. We were looking into that this morning. So I don't know if you saw those announcements, but Scroll bridged their token over. Aptos did the same, and a few other chains actually bridged tokens over and then listed them on PumpSwap. No demand for that.
Too.
Yeah, WorldCoin as well, right? There's been less than $150,000 in volume for these tokens yesterday. And Aptos led that pack with about 45,000, and then Scroll was actually the lowest at $2,500 of volume. So zero demand across the board for any of those assets. To your point, we do have pretty solid evidence here that really just verticalization for the Pump Fund platform.
Do any of your college friends or just non-crypto friends use Pump Fund?
Use Pump Fund? No. Interested in meme coins? Actually, yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Fart coin's that's a Pump Fund coin, yeah? Yeah, it is. And my friends know about Farcoin and have bought it through Moonshot and Phantom. So, and I'm talking about very normie friends. They're interested in crypto. Maybe this is not true normie friends. They're somewhere definitely in the normal bucket, but probably not on the far end of that scale. They have a Coinbase account, Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, maybe, but definitely Bitcoin and ETH. Coming back from this 2021 cycle, those were the assets you owned, and they didn't really venture out beyond that. And now, every time I see this one buddy in particular, he's like, "Dude, just bought Farcoin." I'm like, "All right, probably time to sell." This is not good. And everybody heard about the Trump meme coin. That was talk of the town. I don't know how many people of my friends specifically that onboarded, but I'd say roughly none. But it was definitely front and center and put crypto in everybody's minds. My friends were asking me about more crypto questions than usual during that time, which is cool.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with Ryan Connor at DAS that was we put up as a shorter episode this week, where he basically says like Pump Fund is a back end, it's back end infrastructure. It's not really like a front end. And I don't know anybody that goes on Pump Fund to buy meme coins. You buy it through these like other aggregator platforms or Moonshot or some other platform often.
All right, pull up the screen. We got this data too, so we actually can show specifically.
This is not planned, by the way. This
specific. Yeah, this is. Hey, it's just great data. We gotta have it all. So specifically looking at the bonding curve, we should probably add the AMN to this as well, or even break those two out separately. Yeah, we should definitely add the other one. We built this specific chart before the AMM was live, but yeah, we'll add the AMM piece here as well. But looking at the percentage of volume that originates from other sources than the Pump Fund UI, right? And it's about 30% of volume. I think it peaked around 70% going back to that January timeframe. The large players at this time, if let's break this on percentage basis, BullX was about 30% of the non-UI usage, and then Photon was about another 30%. So, and you see that those two together, going back to that inauguration top, they did about 70% of, well, those two combined plus the other sources did about 70% of trading volume for tokens that were still on the bonding curve. But again, we need to add the AMM piece to this now looking at it.
Huh, fascinating. Yeah. And there's this new one called Axiom, which I don't know if you've been following. It seems like it's just airdrop farming, but they from that Atom TEHC dashboard, it passed Photon and BullX this week in volume, which was pretty fascinating to see.
Yeah, it's doing a pretty decent chunk here, percent of volume and just nominal volume, right? That's doing about $10 million of Pump Fund bonding curve token. So is that I actually don't know a ton about this, but are they basically doing a points program type system where they'll airdrop a token to the platform users?
Yep.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Then you definitely gotta discount the incentivized activity a little bit, without a doubt. But that's interesting to see, no less.
Yeah, it's going through Y Combinator right now, which was interesting to see. There's like a meme coin platform on YC this the winter, which I don't know if Y Combinator is quite as prestigious as it once was. I feel like it gets a lot of hate, at least on the side of Twitter I'm on, but still noteworthy that they put a meme coin platform through the accelerator.
Yeah, Twitter loves to hate on things though, so you got to take that one with a grain of salt. But and so the context of Pump Fund as a backend is kind of interesting, right? Because I put out a tweet that like Zora is Pump Fund for people who live in the suburbs. I don't know how much digging around you've done on Zora, but I would encourage everyone to download the app. No bias at all here. I just think it's a very interesting evolution of the game. By the game, I mean, started with Dogecoin, then it turned into speculation on NFTs, then it turned into speculation on meme coins. And like, what's, the meta we're in feels like it's kind of run its course, but I'm extremely bullish on the game continuing, but in some different form factor. And so I'm very, very curious to watch like these early inklings of, something's going to tip its hat where it's going to be like, oh, this is where it's going. And Zora feels like the best shot on goal there for me, right? Functionally, it's very, very similar to what Pump Fund is on the underworkings, but it has a very friendly UI that's like seems to be modeled after Instagram. So basically, the idea is every post that you make is a meme coin, and it has a billion supply, and the creator gets 1%, and then you launch it on a single-sided, Uni V3 pool, or if you're for more Solana focus, it's very similar to how the Trump token launched with single-sided liquidity that you buy into using the base asset, right? So in the case of Zora right now, that's ETH, and you deposit ETH and you get this meme coin back. So you can bid up other people's coins and interact by interacting with their posts. You double tap to instant buy the coin, and it feels like you're just liking an Instagram post. So it has this new UI experience, but on the back end, it's literally what you're doing with meme coins today. So this is the kind of thing that really gets me interested because it looks and feels like a social app, but it has this monetization element around meme coins. So yeah, I don't know if you've looked into this deeply or have any thoughts on it, but it's really piqued my interest.
I mean, no, I have not messed around with Zora, so this is a bit of an uninformed opinion, but it feels to me like you buy meme coins not because it's like fun, like scrolling through Instagram is fun, but you buy meme coins to get a 10,000x return, and you join alpha groups, and you get your Telegram bot and all these things. So I don't, just like on that 30-second pitch, I'm bearish because the game, quote unquote, with meme coins is like feeling like you have alpha, or feeling like you could get this unlimited upside on the token that you buy. Whereas like doing fun things like scrolling social media feeds don't seem to fit into the meme coin meta, for me at least.
Okay, so I think you hit the nail on the head on like where on this spectrum do you build, right? Where Instagram as it exists today is one end of the spectrum. There's no crypto overlay at all. And then the other end of the spectrum is let's say Pump Fun, right? It's purely this like monetization focused game. And Zora is somewhere in the middle. And you have to pick that point on the curve very intentionally, I think, because totally agree. If you're too far on the Instagram side of that curve, then you're not going to get these people that really want to trade meme coins. And you're like, do too much hiding it, and it's like really twist the UX and doesn't feel natural. Whereas if you go too far in the pump fund end of the curve without actually being pump fun, you don't really obscure it away. And that's just like you need to slam it all the way to their end and make it feel like this very intentional trying to get the 10,000x, having tooling around that, whether that's, the alpha chats you mentioned or like the trading bots. So they're definitely going more on that Instagram end of the spectrum. But I think the hardest challenge they're going to have to overcome is when I scroll Instagram today, I do not have to pay anybody anything. I do not have to load the app with money. I do not have to do anything. I just get to like and interact with the posts, right? And DM people and talk to my friends. How do you break down that barrier in the context of like, if you do like something on Zora, you are using the in-app currency called, they abstracted away the ETH side of it and they call them sparks. But you do need to have sparks to obviously use them. So I made my first post and like it got botted out. And so I got this like free capital to go start interacting with the app. So I didn't have to onboard any dollars. I have a small amount of money in this, wallet on my phone. It's like very, very small amount of money. So, but I can still interact with the application and like other posts, which is interesting. So I don't know how you lower that barrier, right? Obviously, everyone's first post isn't going to be botted. Like that's not a sustainable model for getting people to use the app. But I think that's the big thing they got to figure out how to lower the barrier there. Zora does not have a token today, and I think a token is probably an interesting way of at least getting crypto native people to come on. Now, when you say like, if they were to say, cool, incentives start tomorrow for posting on Zora, we run a points program. You're going to get spammed to hell and the content sucks. So then you see how it's like a multifaceted problem of where do you go on the spectrum? How do you make it look and feel right? And then how do you break down that barrier if like you have to pay to like something? I don't know. I don't have the answers or else I'd probably be building it. But it's all interesting things I'm thinking about.
I know it's not really crypto, quote unquote, but I really did think Kaido was one of the best SocialFi plays we've seen ever, because it recognized that like crypto Twitter itself is kind of a product, and you don't need to bring on an Instagram size market to have a successful app, because crypto Twitter is like already a quite large and pretty economically valuable community, which Kaido sort of proved out.
Yeah, and you didn't have to change user behavior at all for your process to work. Actually, in fact, the less you changed user behavior, the more useful your product
exactly
was. Right? Everybody, those last 2 weeks of the Kaido points program, when everyone knew the airdrop was coming, Twitter sucked. Oh my God, you couldn't post anything. I mean, there was everyone was tagging people for trying to farm the last few points they could. Like that was when it was the worst versus the early days of the Yaps thing they were running. That was fantastic. It was a great way to like surface new content. When you just go on that leaderboard, see a name you've never seen before at the top of the 24-hour Yap distribution list, you're like, oh, let me go scroll through their content. You end up finding great names.
Exactly. Yeah. There's this idea of like social media folklore, kind of, where like if you go to a growing YouTube account, it'll just look like Mr. Beast because people think that you have to exactly copy Mr. Beast to grow your YouTube channel. And that's exactly how the last days of Kaido was. Like somebody tweeted at some point, you need to tag top yappers to get yaps. And so I would just get tagged in all sorts of stuff. And it was like, I don't think this is going to help you in their algorithm, buddy. But it was it became this like mythology around yaps. Good times.
Yeah, it was very, very strange. I totally agree. Yeah, Kaido was a very interesting one. It'd be very cool to see what they do next here. And that was obviously a huge internal milestone, but that team ships like mad, and they've done a lot of work around kind of just optimizing their current offerings. But I'm super curious to see what comes next.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on this conversation around quote unquote the game, which is nice framing by you, is I think there's been a bit of a like dialogue the past couple weeks. Is pump fun over? Is the meme coin meta over? Quote unquote. I think the Blockworks research team has been opinionated that it's not, which I think is true. But I do think that with the PumpSwap launch, there is this tacit acknowledgement that the meme coin game is not going to look the same that it historically has. Like Alan, the co-founder, was on Twitter writing about Pump Fun Season 2. That we're doing creator sharing now. We're getting rid of the burning some of the liquidity from your token. Like, I think there's a belief out there that there's going to be a new evolution in this thing, and it's not going to look like the daily runners and KOL group chats and whatever that has been the past, I don't know, 6-8 months or a year. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, like, I don't know. I don't know if Blockworks Research itself has an official opinion on this, but I mean, anecdotally, like, the data just doesn't support that it's dead. Look at volume. Pump fund volume across AMM and bonding curves is flirting with all-time highs. Like, you objectively cannot call it dead. It makes many millions of revenue per day.
Some are saying it's so over. Others are saying we're so back at the Tron blockchain, which for the first time in a while, maybe ever, I don't know, overtook Solana for the lead in real economic value, tips and fees that are paid to access block space. What are they doing on Tron, Dan?
Tron is almost entirely USDT transfers between sexes. Like, that story is still true. I was poking around the data the other day, just earlier this week, actually. If you look at top transfers by volume, sorted by the receiver or sender of USDT transfers, like, it's still centralized exchanges. And there's a lot of, like, strange spam that happens on that network as well. So Tron has an interesting mechanism where if you stake TRX, the native token of the chain, you basically get like free gas credits. And so your transactions are free. And when you look through and you find this spam, they're almost always using these free credits. So that to me is like, okay, there's a large entity on the chain that is interested in holding the token. And then they're interested on using their token credits for this sort of like spoofing spam like activity. If you want like a more rigid explanation of what that is, you can go to my Twitter, and the pinned thread is like why I hate active addresses as a growth metric for the industry. And then this is literally why, right? So it walks through an example of one on Polygon and one on Tron of these bots that will literally just like circulate USDT or some other stablecoin, as that's where a lot of top line metrics get tracked. And so it will put you in conversations. That's sort of the thesis there. An interesting way to kind of like measure the dynamics of activity that's happening on a chain is looking at REV and then looking at application revenue on that chain. So something like Solana is generally about 50% on, if you add those two values together and then see where's the percentage going between the chain and the apps, generally about 50%. The last 7 days right now, we're looking at 15 million in REV and 24 million in app revenue. So we're actually north of 50% favoring the applications. BNB's 9 million REV, 12 million app revenue, again favoring the applications. Ethereum 4 and 9, again favoring the applications. Base is 700K REV, 4.6 million app revenue, again favoring the applications. But then you look at Tron, very, very clear outlier, and you see about 12 million in REV and about 150 grand in application revenue. Right. And this doesn't include Circle and Tether, which are stablecoin providers. You could do something like, they make money by the stablecoin existing. So maybe take their estimated revenue and divide that into to proportionally divide that or allocate it between the chains that have their supply. We're not currently doing that. It's sort of like a gray area of like, is that really an application revenue? It's all, T-bills on the back end. Like, I don't know. And then there's no like instant transparency into what those values are. So TLDR, we're not including Circle and Tether here, but this is only for, on-chain applications basically. And so you see there's a huge gap in between the dynamics for Tron. And so that again shows me that there's a lot of stablecoin activity and basically nothing else, which is fascinating. I don't have a great explanation for it. It's definitely like the sus chain for sure, but don't have a great answer as to why. Like the incentive is to keep USDT there because that's important for the growth story of the chain. It's always been the USDT chain, the Tether chain. But again, I was poking through the data the other day, and I was actually pretty surprised that it's just largely still centralized exchanges swapping back and allocating to users and swapping assets between them as well. So, yeah, that's the TLDR on Tron.
Congratulations to Tron, I guess.
And I guess one more piece here is anecdotally, you do hear a lot of stories about the Eastern world using Tron to transfer Tether around, and like these vendors will only use Tron.
Yeah, for like actual payment.
Why? Yeah, like actual, peer-to-peer purchases and things of that nature, or moving value in and out of a country. Like that is something you hear anecdotally a lot, and I do acknowledge that I am very blind to what happens in the Asia region. Another good example, it's very Solana specific, is about a third of Jupiter volume is routed through 3 small unknown dexes, largely. I think it's SocialFi, ZeroFi, and there's a V2 of like Otis or something like that. I wish I had this up in front of me, but like that's something we're going to add to the Solana dashboard that we have. But it's just very interesting to see that I would venture to bet that most people on this podcast who like live and breathe Solana have not heard of those 3 dexes, and they're actually taking a third of Jupiter volume right now, which is very, very interesting. And I think they're all Eastern based. And so again, that's just kind of like an example of a known blind spot for me that I'm trying to improve on. So I'm trying to talk to more people on that side of the world. And if that is you and you'd love to chat, like please do reach out. I really want to learn about crypto more broadly instead of just this like natural Western focus that I have living on this side of the world.
It's the East-West arbitrage, how SBF got his start, famously.
That is true. But I'm not trying to be SBF. I'm just trying to learn.
Okay, one final piece I want to touch on before we get out of here. We got the text of the stablecoin bill yesterday, I believe. And one really interesting piece in there, I haven't read through the whole thing, but there is a ban on stablecoins that pass on yield. You cannot have yield-bearing stables. Probably because of some of the risks, I guess, that would be associated with that. It definitely makes stablecoins a bit more boring. I just want to maybe walk through some of the game theory here. So you would think that the beneficiaries of no yield on stablecoins would be companies like Circle and Tether that already don't pass on yield, as well as perhaps DeFi protocols, because if you can't natively get yield on stablecoins, then you could go use that stablecoin, like lend it out in DeFi and create a couple % yield on it. I think that DeFi needs to come a long way in like user friendliness for that to be a widespread thing. But kind of an unexpected piece of the stablecoin law that really matters. And it's also interesting because at DAS, a big takeaway, I think, is some of the messaging now around stablecoins is this is a question of U.S. national interest. Like the U.S. needs to issue debt. There's not enough buyers of debt. But stablecoin companies buy a ton of treasuries. So it's spreading dollarization around the world, U.S. soft power or whatever, and it creates new buyers of U.S. debt. But if you're doing all of this and you can't create interest on that debt if you're onshore, it's a weird world. I don't know, Dan. Quick take on no yield-bearing stables.
Yeah. I think this was definitely the headline of that bill for me personally, and I think a lot of smart people in the industry. I guess it makes sense from the angle of like that starts to break into the security landscape rather than like this payments vehicle, which is what the pitch really is from a industry to regulator conversation. Which I think it makes sense as a natural starting point, but sucks, right? As a user, I want the yield. Agree that agree with your beneficiaries there, and also agree that DeFi UX needs to improve. A good example of that maybe is the Coinbase Morpho style integration. They do Morpho does the hard work, and Coinbase abstracts it all away. And to me, as a user, I don't have to do anything. I just click a few buttons. That's where we need to get for sure. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, I also agree that kind of like lends you to wanting to farm more. I had another point that I really wanted to drive on when you first brought this up, but I'm totally blanking on what it was.
It's interesting to see that like stablecoins are what everyone is talking about, but in the DAS world, in the institutional interest world, but I wonder if it's because of the actual benefits the stablecoins would offer versus they're just a really inoffensive product. I have kind of similar thoughts about BlackRock BUIDL, which is sort of a stable coin as well, that just is buying treasuries and so forth. It's really boring. And I have questions about if it's not actually passing on yield, it's not that useful of a product. So what are we doing here?
Yeah. And the other thing with BUIDL is Athena is the leading driver of demand there, right? They drive about 65% of total BUIDL supply for their similar product, USTB, I believe it's called. And that's that I was chatting with a guy on Twitter about this, and that like really punched me over the head. It was like, holy shit, like stablecoin issuers are on the on-chain versions. Though that is who is driving demand for yield on chain right now. And like another good example is MakerDAO and Spark Protocol kind of ran their, I think the Grand, they call it like the Grand Prix or something. But basically, they're bringing on $3 billion of RWAs, right? So it's another huge inflow going through a stablecoin issuer. So that's definitely something I'm thinking about. But who you should talk to about this at length is Sam McPherson, a longtime MakerDAO core dev, and now the co-founder of Spark. And he has this like view of the world where you have the stablecoin layer, but then you also have the credit layer that sits on top of that. And like that's what USDS is, or the Sky DAI, MakerDAO Sky DAI USDS, whatever you want to call it. Their stablecoin sits on top of that as the credit layer and kind of like absorbs that yield from wherever it's coming and kind of can rotate between the RWAs and the on-chain lending, and then collect that and bring that back to the user in the form of staked USDS. So yeah, that's kind of the other piece that I'm thinking about, is that dynamic where the on-chain issuers kind of become this credit layer that can return that yield back to the users.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't really dug into that yet. Well, I guess we'll end there. Dan, thank you so much as always for coming on the pod. Lots of good data today, and best of luck making more dashboards, I guess.
Yeah, that's all I am, a dashboard guy. I love it. No, thanks, Jack. Yeah, we'll do this more often, man. These are always fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please give us a like, a subscribe, a 5-star rating, wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you enjoyed this, we'd love if you shared it with a friend. Make sure to check out Blockworks Research. Check out the Lightspeed newsletter. It comes out every day, daily Solana news and analysis written by yours truly. That's all we have for today. We'll see you all again very soon.